Welcome to Reach, your platform to connect with other executive assistants and acquire game-changing knowledge and perspective. Reach is designed to inspire your workday, guide you through pivotal moments in your career, and transform you into the executive assistant you've always wanted to be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reach. This is your host, Jessica Van. I'm the founder and CEO of Maven Recruiting Group. And on today's episode of Reach, we are joined by the one and only, the lovely Kim Owens. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, excited, and nervous. All at once.
All rolled into one. That's fair. That's
Exactly.
fair. You're going to be way less nervous by the end of this hour, I promise you. So Kim is a powerhouse executive assistant whose career spans more than a decade supporting top C-level leaders across media, sports, technology, and startup. Kim has held roles at Viacom, the NFL Network, and most recently, she served as the lead senior executive assistant to the CEO, founder, and board member at GoPro, where she supported the company through a period of incredible growth, evolution, and global expansion. Kim is known for her calm under pressure, which we are testing today, aren't we, Kim?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So far, so good. Her trusted judgment and her ability to connect people across every level of an organization. Kim is the ultimate example of how executive assistants can be both the glue, but also the engine behind their team and their executive. She's built a reputation for cultivating strong cross-functional partnerships, advocating for herself and others, and staying resilient in the face of change. In today's conversation, we're going to be diving into what it means to cultivate resilience as an executive assistant, how to stay confident, adaptable, and self-assured, all while managing challenging situations, and how to build influence and alignment across departments as a trusted liaison between your executive and the broader organization. That's a lot to cover. So on that note, Kim, welcome to the show. We are, as I said before, really, really happy to have you here.
Thank you. Now I feel much better. See, I'm already at ease.
See, look at how that works. So let's start with your journey. As I mentioned, you've built this incredible career spanning Viacom and the NFL Network and then GoPro. So can you walk us through how you got started as an executive assistant and what experiences shaped the way that you approach the way that you support today?
Actually, it's been 2 decades, which will date me, but I'm okay with that. I kind of fell into this. I was pre-med in college. I thought I wanted to be a doctor because I really wanted to help people. That was like my goal, ultimate goal. And then I realized my second semester, my junior year, that I didn't want to go to medical school and take all that additional years of schooling and debt. So I took a year and I actually went into teaching. It's a career that is helping others. And my father was a teacher and I loved kids, so I felt it was a natural fit. There are a plethora of reasons I can tell you why I only did a year, but I only did a year.
I couldn't do a week, honestly, but sure. What age group were you teaching? That might tell us all we need to know.
Okay, I was teaching 2nd through 6th grade science and math and developing the curriculum for them. And I was also like 21 at the time, 22. So I really felt ill-equipped to be responsible for children's education and the way this administration was run. There was a conflict there of how my morals fit in there. So I took some time and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And for me, school was always a safe place. So naturally, I considered law school like anyone would, right? In hindsight, I should have done business school, but who knows? So I was studying for law school to get in, and really that was my focus. When I met somebody at the time who was a VP at Artisan Entertainment. And I will never forget this conversation I had with him because he is a brilliant mind. He was undergrad at Berkeley, Harvard Law School, graduated at 21. So I knew he knew what he was talking about. And he had a candid conversation with me and really was like, work for me. Let's figure out what you want to do. Because if you go to law school, you're going to be a lawyer. Like they teach you how to be a lawyer. It's a lot of reading. And that was my fallback. So I listened to him and I took the opportunity. And about 3 months after I started supporting him, he was promoted to the chief operating staff. And that was like my first dipping my toe into supporting a C-level office and getting to know C-level executives and presidents and things like that. And then naturally from there, I enjoyed that opportunity so much that I thought that this is what I want to do. You sometimes question yourself along the way, but I learned that I could do that really well. So that's how I fell into this.
That's crazy because it sounds like, with the exception of the first 3 months, you basically started at the top. Your career started at the top.
Yes, it was a quick learning curve for sure. A lot of it I felt like came naturally, but we were also learning together. So I think that helped. Most assistants join entertainment so they can move on to something else, bigger, better, whether or not it's like producing, PR, whatever field they want to. And I was given that chance to move forward in PR, which I took about 6 months to 8 months in, and I quickly decided that wasn't for me. That really taught me, something valuable, and this is how it did shape my role today, is it taught me the importance of kindness and empathy. Especially in entertainment, I feel like that's often overlooked, and that doesn't jive, I guess, with who I am as a person. So I guess at that point, I wasn't tough enough for those positions. And EA work was just comfortable for me because I knew I did it and I did it well.
And it didn't contradict, I'm extrapolating here, but it sounds like it didn't contradict your ethics, which sounds like in other situations that was problematic for you in both the teaching and the other entertainment roles.
Correct. And I think a lot of it had to do with who I was supporting, who just really taught me how executives could be. I mean, he set a pretty high bar. He was a very morally smart person, and I didn't see any conflict there. Now, with other executives, I could see where it would go, but I was fortunate enough to get my first experience with somebody who I really respected.
Yeah, that is very fortunate. So thinking back on these earlier formative years as an EA, were there any things that you encountered in those years that influenced the way that you approach your work today? Any learnings or formative experiences?
I think that, again, at Artisan, it really taught me the importance of kindness and empathy and acting with grace. And at my subsequent opportunities at the NFL, it really taught me how to be respectful of the clock and other people's times. It was a company who literally was run by a clock. But it also taught me not to take things too seriously. You're talking about a company that revolves around men playing with balls, dropping balls, kicking balls. It's not rocket science. No one is dying. And having wanted to go into the medical field, I realized nobody should take themselves that seriously. And that position also really taught me how to not take things personally, which was a very hard lesson to learn. They say that you have to have thick skin, and you don't really know what that means until you're in it, building that skin. And that's what that job taught me, is how to build that thick skin, that armor that I really feel is needed really at any position or any job that you work with other people, not just EAs, but for EAs especially. I think that it is important that we develop that as a skill.
It's funny to hear you say at the end of the day, it's men playing with balls. And by the same rationale, you could, that can be interpreted so many ways, but
yes, and please do that appropriately. Edit that one appropriately, please.
But the other, like by the same rationale, you could say, the way that people just pander and there's like this level of import around the entertainment industry. It's the same kind of thing. It's like at the end of the day, it's people making movies for the entertainment of others, but there's like this really like lavish, otherworldly kind of aggrandizing that happens, in both of these industries. So as you said, you've been at this for not 1 decade, but 2 decades. So I can imagine that in that time frame, you've seen the role of EA evolve so much. I mean, I certainly have. I've been in recruiting for executive assistants for, about the same amount of time. So about 19 years now. So I can certainly see the evolution, but I'm curious, as somebody who is in the thick of it, how has the EA function changed over the last 20 years? And what new skills or new qualities do you think is imperative for today's EAs to have?
Obviously, technology has changed tremendously since I started. I mean, I was in the days where you answered a real desk phone and you sent faxes. But I also think the role of the EA has evolved too. We're not secretaries anymore. And I think that a lot of EAs are offended, and righteously so, when that we're referred to that. Because I think the way it has evolved is we are more strategic now, and we're more involved, and we're able to learn and dissect priorities to really help forge the company ahead. Whereas I think 20 years ago, you were just that. You were somebody who was answering phones. You were a task doer, not really like able to give input. And I think that has changed in a really tremendous way for EAs as a career. I think it's what appeals to me to this day so much. But I think that is like the main thing that has evolved. And also being able to know your own priorities. Back when, you just, like I said, you just did, right? You didn't really think about yourself. And now, just given culture changes and things like that, you're taught inherently to like think about yourself, like respect, make other people respect you. So I think that the level of respect given to the position has changed tremendously as well.
Do you have any theories as to what instigated that change or evolution?
My theory, if you had to guess, was you were probably getting career EAs into those positions who are really executing at a high level that earn that respect, that people realize we can utilize them for more than just this. Also, technology helped, right? We don't have to answer phones anymore, and we don't have to send faxes. So how do we utilize that time when you hire somebody who is capable to move you, not just yourself as an executive forward, but move your team forward? So I think that, technology, time and competency of the people who are involved in this and actually look at it as a career has helped evolve that.
Yeah, I'm really curious to delve into that, and maybe I'll take that away as a note for myself, because I agree with you 100%, Kim. I've seen the same progression happen, and I remember like even just the archetype, right, of kind of who's in this role today versus what I was seeing, 17, 19 years ago is different. And certainly the way that companies think about this position, the way that executive assistants think about themselves, think about their contributions, like all of that I 100% agree with you, has changed in the ways that you described. And I'm curious, like, as just more of a cultural exercise to really understand what might have contributed to that on a holistic level. And yeah, to your point, definitely technology could have certainly been an impetus, but I feel like there's probably a multitude of factors that'd be interesting to probe into.
I mean, I'm sure you could also probe into, you're not supposed to talk about this, but you can probably probe into like how genders are looked differently now, because I would say the majority of EAs are women, and women in the workplace, from the very beginning, from the minute we're born, we have to prove ourselves. And so I think the cultural changes in how women are viewed also has helped.
100%. Yeah. I wonder if somebody's done a PhD on this. We're going to find out. That might be a topic for another episode. But in any case, very interesting. So you've served as this connective tissue, as we've talked about, between executives and multiple departments. So can you describe for us and for listeners who are really looking to glean an understanding of how to be most effective in their role, can you describe how this ability that you have to build these cross-functional relationships, how that really ensures that you help your executive to stay aligned and dialed in and embedded within the broader organization? If you can help connect those dots, and especially when you're supporting a CEO, if you can really help connect those dots for listeners about how you do that and why that's such an important thing to do.
I think it's important because CEOs, and especially founders, if you have that combination, they're often or always too busy to keep a pulse on what's going on cross-functionally, and the priorities that different groups have and maybe issues they may be having. It's really hard for them to do that because their time is sucked up with so many different things, right? And I think that knowing that it allows me to work as that cross-functional person so I can maximize his face time when it's actually needed, and I can know the priorities and I can know the issues and I can help discern like what needs to be addressed now, what can probably wait. You're kind of like the eyes and ears of your executive with the goal of them being able to spend more time innovating or taking high-level meetings. I think that being that connective tissue between the teams also allows you from a bigger picture to see kind of the holes and make suggestions to like maybe marketing should be meeting with sales because they drive each other, and maybe product should be meeting with sales because they also drive each other. So I just think that it's important to be your executive's eyes and ears, but in a responsible way.
So would you do this as a more formal exercise? For instance, would you meet with these different cross-functional groups on a regular schedule, or would it be more of like a haphazard thing that you would then, pulse them and flag things to your CEO as needed? Like, explain that part of it.
I would say it's both. I was very fortunate of, starting at companies that were smaller when I started. So I got to really know the executives and build relationships with them of trust. But also when it came to like setting and establishing priorities and meetings on my exec's calendar, I made it a point to meet with the PM on that meeting or somebody who's involved so I could really understand the purpose of it and the priorities. So I would say it was like kind of a mix of both. Sometimes it was haphazard. If somebody had an issue, they would come to me and say, this is what I need. Or it would be like me proactively, like having a weekly meeting with somebody on the marketing team of like, okay, well, what's the agenda this week and what does it look like? I think it was a combination of both.
When you're ingratiating yourself to new team members or a new audience, is there something that you're doing to establish, that kind of open relationship to where that they feel comfortable coming to you?
I think it revolves around establishing trust and competency of being able to be there when you're needed, being available, being willing to help, being a nice person always helps. But, in order to build trust, you have to earn it. And you have to take it, right? So it's a two-way street, and it's really at some point about building relationships. People want to help people that they like. And I think that goes a long way in our position. I know that there are some EAs that, rule by much harsher, stricter, like, it's my way or the highway thing, and they may get a lot done. I just really feel like you get more done by forging solid relationships with the people you work with at all levels, like including, receptionists and mailroom people and IT. And it's important to bridge that gap because also you're a reflection of the exec you support. So it's our job to make them look good. And I think being able to forge those relationships and that trust is important.
absolutely agree. So your experience going back to the NFL Network, you've said has taught you a lot about resilience and also about not taking things personally. So what advice would you give executive assistants about how to separate the emotion from difficult situations or the emotion from, maybe some unpleasant feedback or not awesome feedback that they've received? What advice do you have for weathering through those types of situations and, basically having the resilience to go the long haul as you've done?
That's a great question because that is a learned skill. It's something that I didn't know because I would consider myself an empath. So it was hard. It was definitely hard, but I've learned that it's not always about you. It's not always about me. You never know what's going on in someone else's life that is causing them to act in a certain way. You can assume it's you, but it's not always about you. And at the end of the day, it's not my business what you think about me, right? I would say build a circle of people that you truly trust and respect, that you can go in these situations for some perspective so you can be introspective, but always act with grace because again, you never know what someone else is going through, and always be the bigger person. I mean, you're never going to win that battle. You just have to prioritize yourself and your mental health, which took me a long time to do. But it's like that analogy of, the oxygen mask on a plane. If you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. So yeah, my advice would be don't worry about what other people think about you. No, be confident in yourself, know your worth, execute as best as you can, and only take to heart the opinions and the feedback of people you truly respect and trust. And that might be only one or two people.
Right. And also there's a difference between somebody being in a mood, right? And to your earlier point about you don't know what people are bringing to the table. You don't know what happened on their way into work. You don't know what they're dealing with in their personal life. You don't know what news they got the night before. You don't know a lot of things. So there's that. And then there's the other part about, the feedback that actually is intended for you. And I think those are two different things. How people show up, how they communicate, how they convey things may or may not have anything to do with you. And more often than not, it doesn't have anything to do with you. But there is a thing about, I think, about if there's specific feedback that's intended for you, something that, is reflective of what you did or how you handled a particular situation, I do think that those are growing moments. And so I think that needs to also be absorbed and, received with a level of openness, because, that really is paramount for any level of growth and continued improvement.
Receiving feedback with grace and learning from it. You learn from, for me at least, I have learned from every experience I've ever been in, and, take what you want with it, but the feedback's there and it's a perception that someone has. And if you feel like it's reflective, learn from it. Don't take it to heart, make yourself better.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how you use that. You use it as a tool of power, not as a tool of criticism.
Yeah. It reminds me of, there was a book I read many years ago. I think it's called The Four Agreements. Yes. I don't know if you know that book. You know it? Yeah. I love that. And it's such a handy, concise manual for life. It's not some overwhelming thing that you can't digest. And it's really pragmatic. But one of the things that I always remember about that one is do not take anything personally. Because
everyone should read that book. It's a short book. It's a short read.
Yep.
It's just listen to it on audiobooks if you need to. Yep. But
it's a powerful tool. The Four Agreements.
It's a very powerful thing to know. Because it is easy to take things personally, especially with the way technology is and the fast pace of social media and things like that. People's feelings can get hurt very easily. and it can knock down your self-worth and your confidence, and that in turn
Mm-hmm.
affects how you treat other people. And you really have to be cognizant of that and be able to compartmentalize it and draw a line. And
Yeah.
I can't do that all the time. I'm not saying I've mastered that
Mm-mm.
skill. I'm still learning it every day, and it comes
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of heartache, but it also comes with a lot of growth.
Yeah. And I think too, the cycles get shorter, ideally, right? So maybe it's not that you don't experience dejection anymore. I think that's probably unrealistic for any of us. But it's that hopefully the amount of time you spend down and out, benched, licking your wounds, like decreases. And
Yeah.
so if it
Ruminating on
used
it in
to,
your head. It's like, learn from
yes,
it and move
yeah,
on. You know, it's just like the
uh-huh,
media cycle, right? Something is really big one day and the next day
exactly,
something else happens. And we're all
exactly,
going to make mistakes. To say that none of us are going to make mistakes on either end of the assistant side or the exec side is not, it's not reasonable. It's not. It's
right.
what you do with those mistakes, and how you
Mm-hmm.
move forward with those. That is,
Yeah.
important.
That's the key. So I think there's, we talked about this, like, I'm going to call it emotional resilience, right? That's pretty key, I think, for any EA, anyone who's in this career. I mean, it's a key for everybody that's interacting with society and human beings, period. But I think especially for executive assistants who are very often in the thick of very emotionally laden interactions. And also, I would argue that executive assistants often get the brunt of people when they're not on their best behavior, because I think that oftentimes EAs get the executive when their guard is down, whereas other people might only see the executive when they're sort of front facing and stage ready. But the EA sees it all. They see the front stage, behind the stage, all the
Yeah.
things.
And
So
we're usually privy to information before other people's
exactly.
are that can be emotionally affecting.
Exactly. So there's just, I think that's like absolutely key, is this emotional resilience. But the other thing is also, as long as we're talking about resilience, it's also thinking about, resilience in terms of weathering all the different phases that can happen during a company's genesis all the way through, IPO and beyond, right? So it's like some moments, and I know you can certainly speak to this, Kim, you've seen this firsthand, is, one moment you're flying high, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we're amazing. The company's doing phenomenal. Product sales are through the roof. Customers love us, all that good stuff, flying high moments, to then like the less desirable situations where suddenly the stock price is tanking, or, something like a security breach happens, or there's a leak, or there's a harassment case. I mean, who knows what, right? So how do you recommend cultivating that kind of resilience, which is a different sort of, I think, skill than emotional resilience? This is like, there's a lot that can come at you as an executive assistant saddled up next to a CEO.
Um, I would say acceptance. Acceptance of knowing that the most consistent thing with change is change. That highs and lows are inevitable. They're an absolute. They're gonna happen to any company. I mean, you tell me a company that hasn't gone through ups and downs, like I'd love to work for them. Um, but I would say enjoy the highs when they're high, because they might be short-lived, they might be long-lived. The lows are going to come at some point, and just learn how to compartmentalize it. It's a really tough thing to do. It was really tough for me to learn because, I take a lot of personal pride in my jobs, and I've met, some of my best friends through them. And so it's very personal, but learning how to compartmentalize is important, but also keeping your health, your mental health, a priority, and use a lot of discretion is important, because it can be very taxing, to know things are going to go a certain way and nobody else does. And it's your job to be discreet and hold
Mm-hmm.
that within. But holding that within also can be taxing on your mental health. So just
Mm-hmm.
being able to put yourself as a priority in those situations and compartmentalize it, and know that this is work. It's a job. It's a means to an end. I can care a lot, but it's also my job to weather this storm. This is what I was hired for. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing I would just say, just know that it's going to happen, and just brace yourself for it, accept it, roll with it. Hopefully you and your exec and your company learns through it. But yeah, that's the best advice I could give on that one. That's a tough
Mm-hmm.
one. It's hard. It's heartbreaking to see the ups and
Mm-hmm.
downs.
Yeah, it is. And to not be able to
Control it at all.
enjoy the same level of, what's that?
And not be able to have any influence over it. Because again, as
Yeah,
executive
no,
assistants, we see a
sure.
lot. We could interject things at times that we feel like may influence it, but that's not what our job is. Our job is
Yeah,
to, make our execs' lives easier so they could do their jobs better.
yeah,
So it's really
yeah,
like, that compartmentalization. Like,
is key. Well, and then I think there's the other thing that can be lonely in this role is that you really can't commiserate with anybody. There's no one that you can go to and say, oh, like, I got to get this off my chest, because you can't. You simply can't. Like, there's just too much that you're privy to. There may be a situation where the EA who supports the CFO also knows what's going on, right? But even then, like, it's not
you
a
don't
given.
talk to
And
each other.
so
Yeah. And then you still don't
you don't
talk to each
talk.
other about that.
Exactly. So, yeah.
It's
So
tough to keep inside.
how did you, I mean, I know you do bar. I know
I
you do
do.
the bar
I
method.
do bar
Is
method.
that
I do.
is that your coping strategy, Kim?
Yes, and I
Read
have
the
a
four
very,
agreements
very,
and
very
go.
good therapist, who helps me balance myself.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, I find some of my closest friends are other EAs because we get it. Like there's an EA code, right? And you can
Mm-hmm.
talk in ambiguities because a lot of the situations may be specific to you, but they could be also generalized. And we understand it. Like if it's like complaining about like how much time something changes or, somebody missing a flight, it's like we get it. If we understand if
Mm-hmm.
we're at a family dinner and have to step out. Our friends and family might not understand that, but somebody in our
Right.
career knows that.
Yeah.
So just, get your tribe. Know that you can't
Mm-hmm.
discuss specifics, but know that there are people who are likely going through what you're going through. And get a therapist, like it
Yeah.
helps. So does
Yep.
exercise.
It does. All the things. Yeah. So I'm curious, switching gears slightly. In terms of thinking about advocacy and self-advocacy in particular, I guess, did it come naturally to you, this ability to advocate for yourself? And if not, how did you learn to advocate for yourself? And can you perhaps give us some examples of times when you advocated for yourself and how it went, how you approached it, and ultimately what the outcome was?
That's another good question. That was a learned skill. Self-advocacy is something that did not come naturally to me. I'm not somebody who likes to ask people for anything, which is why I could never do sales. But just observing, like what goes on around you, who gets promoted, who gets the raises, who gets put in other positions. It kind of opens your eyes and you realize that like if you don't advocate for yourself, no one else will, especially in our positions, right? You have to ask. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to know your worth because no one's going to hand you a raise. And if you never ask, the answer is always going to be no. So
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to like, once you know your worth and you can stand strong on your beliefs of your worth and you do your homework. That's what, like bring what you've done and what you've accomplished and the comps, against other people in your positions. And again, it really comes down to like knowing your worth and believing in yourself. Because no one else is going to do it for you. You can wait, but no one hands you a promotion without, at least in our positions. I have
Mm-hmm.
never seen somebody, automatically get a raise or like, oh, here's the next best job for you. Because we're often thought in hindsight, we're behind the scenes. We're not the ones who are causing, issues about these things. But if we
Mm-hmm.
don't do it for ourselves, no one's going to do it for us.
Again, I think it comes down to knowing what your truth is, knowing what you need, knowing kind of what your hard line is, and knowing how to speak to your accomplishments, what you're capable of, your track record. All of these things that should be stuff that you have ready all the time, quite honestly, because you never know when you're going to be in a situation of needing to help influence that for yourself.
And have that. And in turn, especially at the CEO level, you're also advocating for yourself for the other EAs on your team. You're leading by example. You're teaching them that this is something that you can do. And I think that's also important, especially when you talk to like being a career EA.
Let's say you've gotten all your data, right? You've downloaded Maven's comp guide, or you got your hands on some other good data, and it's time to have the conversation. How do you think it's most effective to frame and position that ask?
I think the most important part is to figure out what it is you want. What are you asking for? Are you asking for growth? Are you asking for more money? Are you asking for a new title? Don't leave room for ambiguity, because then that leaves it up to them to decide. So I would say know what it is that you want, go into it knowing it is what you want, and be upfront. State your asks, state the beliefs of why you deserve this by, again, doing your research, right? And bringing that to the table. But also just, again, knowing your worth. But I think one of the most important things is also like knowing really what the ask is, whether or not it's comp or a position, because again, you could go in there saying, I want a bigger role. And then they could just be like, okay, well, we'll give you XYZ more, a year. And to them, that's solving it. But if your goal is to become another level of EA, you didn't accomplish that. But then you just spent this time doing that. So now you're gearing yourself up for another conversation that has to come down the road if that's really what you want. Whereas if you knew that going into it and stated it, that gives them the basis to make their decision. And whatever comes back, then it's your decision on how you act upon that.
As you said a little bit earlier in the conversation, for you, there was never really a desire to be something other than a career CEO assistant. Chief of staff was not something that interested you, that this is your career. And to me, that demonstrates a real sense of pride and distinguishment and confidence and value in who you are and what you offer, and a real sense of pride. And so I'm curious to hear in your own words, why do you think this work matters so much? And is there maybe a reframe that you can offer to others who, might not see the same level of pride or conviction in what they're doing? Like, do you have maybe a reframe for them around really understanding and connecting to this source, that you seem to tap into so abundantly?
I would start with what got you to where you are in this position, period. And mine was always, I wanted to help other people, right? And I feel like being able to help the CEO or an executive at the top level, you're literally helping everybody else on the team, on their team, in the company. It's like, it's the trickle down effect, right? You are making your executive more efficient, requiring maybe less meetings for them, which allows other people to sit in less meetings and enables them to do their work more or to balance their personal life more. And it's just, I think that because I like to help, I feel like just because you are perceptually, if that's a word, helping one person, you really are helping the greater good of the company and driving it forward. I think that's why I really like being at this level. But I think that happens at any level, because anybody who has an assistant, at least in the Bay Area, has teams, they have direct reports. And by you doing your job well for your executive, you're doing a job for everyone else on the team. And so that's how I look at it, because I do like to help people. That's just kind of in my nature. So as a career path, it's just, I really enjoy, doing my best. It's my job to make my exec more efficient and his life better so he could do his job better, which allows everyone else the freedom to do their jobs better. And that's like the most tangible way that I can contribute. And it's behind the scenes. It's like if you're somebody like me who doesn't like to be in front of people, who doesn't like to do presentations, who doesn't like to, do some of those things, it's a great way to contribute without having to do that, depending on your role, that is. And a lot of times the higher you go, the more strategic you get and the less of like the quote grunt work you do, because you become smarter, you work smarter, not harder, and you use your own time more efficiently, inherently. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I mean, it definitely answers it for you. And I think that that's what everyone has to figure out is, what is their why in this? And, is their why still relevant? And does it still make sense for them? And, I think that you're lucky, Kim, in that you're very clear about who you are, what you enjoy. And I think you're really comfortable in this niche, that you've created for yourself. And I think some people have a little bit more tension around that. So I think it's important to kind of revisit that. And like you said, ask yourself, why did you get into this in the first place? And can you tap back into that renewable resource?
That comes back to like experience, but also like knowing your ask, right? Knowing your requirements. Like for me, because of where I've been, I've learned that now I want to work for a company that has a mission that's greater than itself. And that is empowering. And with that experience, you can be more selective in those things. So it's really kind of knowing what it is you want to get out of it. And it's also like knowing what type of person you want to work for. The people that we support, they're our partners, whether, they look at us like that or not, but we know everything about them. We support them on all levels. Any EA who says that they don't do any personal work at all, like I challenge you to really make that true, because guaranteed you're scheduling something personally. But work for somebody that you respect and you believe in. Because I really did. After the NFL, I questioned, is this something that I want to do? Keep moving forward. And then I got to my next situation. I was like, absolutely. So it's, I think, an individual path that comes with experience. And I think you have to, it's like dating, right? You date a lot so you know what you don't want. That's the same with, jobs. You do the jobs that you learn what you don't want and you won't accept. And like for me, the basic is I won't ever work for somebody who doesn't respect other people and who's not kind to other people. I mean, that's my bottom line. And the nice thing is about in this day and age, most people have full transparency in that upfront because they know that it doesn't behoove anyone to not be transparent about that. And there are EAs out there that can handle that can totally turn that off and just do. But know what it is know your baseline, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah, totally. I think that goes back to advocacy is self-knowing, and it's subjective. What might work for you won't work for somebody else, and what someone else can tolerate, you can't tolerate, whatever. It's just know what it is.
It's knowing your
and be
priorities.
Clear about that.
It's knowing your personal and your professional priorities. And don't forget yourself in that. It's really easy to get wrapped up in our execs' lives because that's our jobs, but you have to remember yourself in that. Like, what is it that you want out of this? Especially if you're going to be a long-term EA, you have to get something back. Otherwise, you're not going to be driven to stay in this role.
Yeah. I agree. That's keeping it real. So, a final question for you, Kim. If you could support anyone throughout the course of history, who would you choose to support and why?
This one was actually a pretty easy one for me because I actually was recently watching a documentary with my husband about this person, but it would be Da Vinci, hands down. I think
Oh,
he had so much success in multiple disciplines. I mean, he was an artist, he was a scientist, he was an innovator, he was an engineer. He was like the original founder of all companies in my mind.
yeah.
He had concepts that literally change people's lives and still affect us to this day. And I
Hmm.
think that he could have benefited from somebody who could help organize his thoughts, organize his tasks, uh, be adaptable and be strategic in planning on execution because who knows how many other ideas and things that he had cooking up. He just didn't have the
Hmm.
skills to like prioritize it, organize it, execute it. So I think
Hmm.
that supporting somebody like that would be like amazing because I feel like he
Yeah.
would really be changing the world.
Yeah. Totally. Definitely goes
I'm gonna
back to
hope that
your.
he's a nice guy. Like I would assume that, I mean, but a lot of people, like, they're quirky, but it's like, I think that the bigger mission of what he's done and accomplished, would outweigh that.
Yeah, enduring for sure. It's funny you mention him because one, we've never had that as an answer, but two, I was out to dinner with my son, my 9-year-old son last night. We went out for a little pizza dinner, just he and I, and he brought him up. He was talking about Da Vinci at dinner, and he was asking me, "Did you know that he invented?" He said, "I think he said hot air balloons," and I
And
was like,
flight,
"Really?"
yeah, he's done
Yeah,
so much more than people like know.
realize.
And
Yeah,
had ideas and the fact that he's an artist as well. I mean, he had a
right.
multitude of capabilities that
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of them were probably unharnessed.
good answer. Yeah, I
I'm
like that.
surprised nobody's ever said that before because when I was thinking
No
about
one
it
has
and
ever
trying to
said
like
that.
really
Mm-mm.
like think about who is it that I would, and I was talking to my husband about this a little bit. He was like, "Well, it'd be Howard Stern, of course. I love Howard Stern." I was
I
like,
actually
"No."
think we've had Howard Stern as an answer. I'm
Oh,
almost
I can
certain we have.
imagine, but it's just like
Yeah.
for bigger scale, bigger like what, as a career EA and somebody who really wants to contribute, I think that would be the biggest contribution.
Well, Kim, hopefully that wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Not at all.
Not at all.
It's
Okay,
always
good. Good,
worse.
good, good.
It's always better than you think it's going to be. You go
It
into
always is. No, it always is. And I really appreciate you taking the time, one, to do this, but two, giving us this retrospective of, really compilation on your career, but also compilation on just advice from, 2 decades of being in the trenches and doing this work. And, I think that that's a really wonderful retrospective and great offering to especially those who are a little bit more up and coming around like how do I do this for the long term. I think this is really 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 wonderful insights that you have shared today. So thank you for indulging us and
of
getting outside
course.
your comfort zone, and we very much appreciate you
And
being a
thank
part of
you. Thank you
Reach.
for asking me these questions. I think these are important discussions to have that a lot of us never have with each
Yeah.
other.
Reach is brought to you by Maven Recruiting Group, who specializes in placing executive assistants and support staff to the Bay Area's most prominent executives and companies. If you've enjoyed being part of our podcast community and are interested in becoming part of our candidate community, we're currently hiring for roles in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and Los Angeles. You can visit us at www.mavenrec.com to see some of the roles we're currently working on and to submit your resume.